Sai Ram students, welcome to the fourth session of chapter 3, that is properties of natural resources. So students, before going to today's session, let's revise what we had learned in the third session. So in the third session, children, we learnt about the properties of water. So water, under normal conditions, you find it in the liquid form, and water, it is a fluid substance, and that's the reason it does not have a shape but it has a volume. So students, after that we saw about the why ice it floats on water. So what was the reason? So the reason was that water, when it is originally in the liquid form, when you freeze it, it turns into ice. That means it becomes into the solid state. So what happens? Its volume increases and the density it decreases. So that's the reason ice it becomes lighter than water. So that's the reason that ice floats on water. Then we discussed about the various articles which float in water and which sink in water. So those articles whose density is more, they sink in water, and whose density is less, they float on water. After that, children, we saw about the formula of density. So what was the formula of density? Density is equal to mass upon volume. So mass, it is measured in grams, and volume, it is measured in cubic centimeter. So therefore density is equal to gram upon cubic centimeter. So therefore the unit of density is gram per cubic centimeter. So after that, children, we saw about the anomalous behavior of water. So what happens? The ice which is there, it freezes, as I told you, when you keep it in the freezer. So when you keep it in the freezer, the temperature it falls below 4 degrees centigrade. So what happens? The volume increases and the density it decreases. So that's the reason that is called as the anomalous behavior of water. Then we saw about an experiment wherein 2 buckets of water were taken, and in one bucket plain water was there, and in the other bucket salt plus water was there. And then we took a potato and we immersed it, or we put it in the bucket. So the bucket which was containing water, in that the potato sinked, whereas the bucket which was containing salt plus water, in that the potato floated. So why did it float in salt plus water solution? Because its density, the water's density increased. So that's the reason potato floated on the water. So salt plus water, when it is used, that time the density increases. Then we saw about the definition of the solute. The substance that dissolves, that is called as a solute. So we had taken salt. So salt is a substance that dissolves. Then we saw about the definition of solvent. The substance in which the solute dissolves, that is your water. So in the water you use the solute, that is the salt. And solvent, what we get when the solute dissolves in the solvent, that is called as a solution. Means water plus salt, that is called as a solution. Then we saw, children, about the uses of water according to their properties. Water, it is useful for transport because of its fluidity. Then water, when it falls from a greater height, it is used to generate electricity with the help of a generator. Then water, it can be also used as a good coolant. So that's the reason it is used to control the temperature of the engine in the motor vehicles. Also, water, it is called as a universal solvent. Why it is called as a universal solvent? Because it dissolves, many substances dissolve in water. So, water, it is used as a solvent in factories, in laboratories, in the foodstuffs, also in the biological processes such as excretion, digestion, etc. Also, water, it is used for cleaning purposes such as bathing, washing clothes, etc. So this was all what we discussed about the properties of water. Today we are going to discuss about the properties of soil. So soil, the important property of the soil is its color. So color is the important property of the soil, and the color, the soil, it gets its color because of the various processes. Now, if you see the color of the soil near the land surface, it will be darker, but as you go to the lower layers, its color goes on becoming lighter. Then you can see soil of different colors such as black, red, yellow, copper and grey. Right, children? So, and this soil, the color of the soil, it is useful for classification. Also, it is indirectly useful in indicating the several properties of the land. So, some of the properties of the soil such as fertility, drainage of water. Drainage of water means the water, it flows away, and the capacity to hold water, it becomes clear from its color. So, what is the important property of the soil? Color is the important property of the soil, and this color, the soil gets it because of the several processes. So there are different types of colors of soil, that is red, black, copper, yellow and grey. This soil, color of the soil, it is also useful for classification. Also, it is indirectly useful for the several properties of the land. Now, what are the properties of the soil? That it should have a good fertility, there should be drainage of water, it should have the capacity to hold the water. So that all depends upon the color of the soil. Let's move to the next part. So the color of the soil, it also depends upon its texture. Now texture means when you take it into hand, you will feel how it is, whether it is smooth, it is rough or it is hard. So that is called as a texture. So as well as there are some organic ingredients and chemical ingredients like iron and lime. So the color of the soil, it also depends upon the texture, the organic ingredients and the chemical ingredients like iron and lime. So here one experiment has been given wherein you have to take 3 measuring cylinders, right? And you have to take 3 glass funnels, plus you will take 3 filter papers, and you will make the cone shaped, using that filter paper you will make a cone, and you will insert that cone into the glass funnel. Also you will require sand, sandy soil and clay, and a test tube also, and water. So now what you are going to do, you are going to take 3 measuring cylinders and you are going to place 3 glass funnels containing the filter paper in it. After inserting it in the measuring cylinder, you are going to add, now in the A measuring cylinder you are going to add sand, and in the B measuring cylinder you are going to add the sandy soil, and in the third measuring cylinder, that is C, you are going to add the clay soil, and after that you will put a test tube of water in all the three measuring cylinders one by one. So after some time you will see that the water has got collected in all the three measuring cylinders. So you will see that the measuring cylinder in which sand was put, that is A, is the measuring cylinder wherein the water which has been collected is more than the sandy soil and the clay soil. So that means the sand, it has got more, it has got the capacity drainage to it has the capacity of draining the water, right? So this was there in this experiment. So soil's texture. The texture of the soil, it contains particles of different sizes. Now the texture of the soil, it is determined by the proportion of the particles of various sizes in it, right children? So the texture of the soil, it is determined by the proportion of particles of various sizes in it. So the soil, it contains particles of different sizes. Now we'll see about the different types of soil based on the texture. Now here in your syllabus they have given three types of soil, that is sandy soil, silt soil and clay soil. These are the three types of soil which we are going to study based on the texture. So what are the three types of soil? Sandy soil, silt soil and clay soil. So let's study them in detail. Now you can see over here the sandy soil, right children? This is the sandy soil. This is your silt soil. And this is your clay soil. So can you see the difference? In the sandy soil, if you see, there are some, you can see some granular or large particles, right? Whereas in the silt soil, you can see it is little bit lesser. The proportion of the particles is lesser. Whereas in the clay soil, you can see it is like a lump, right children? So now let us study in detail sandy soil. In the sandy soil, the proportion of the sand is high. That is, the large particles, they are high in proportion. Large particles, they are high in proportion. So it is easy to plow the soil. But the water, it drains rapidly through this soil, and so in the sandy soil, the proportion of the large particles is high, and water, it drains rapidly, that it flows rapidly from this soil, and it is easy to plow also. But the disadvantage is that it is less fertile. So why it is less fertile? Because the particles of the sandy soil, they are made of the mineral called as silicon dioxide, that is quartz. So the sandy soil, it is less fertile because the particles of the sandy soil, they are made of the mineral called as the silicon dioxide or quartz. The particles of the sandy soil, they do not dissolve in water. And that's the reason the soil, it has got very little capacity to supply the nutrients. So children, the particles which are present in the sandy soil, they do not dissolve in water because they are large in size. And that's the reason the soil, it has got very little capacity to supply the nutrients. So let's see about the next soil, that is the silt soil. Now the silt soil, it is also called as the sedimentary soil. Now the particles of the silt soil, they are of medium size, and the silt soil, it is not plowable as the sandy soil, but it is much more plowable than the clay soil. So the silt soil, it is also called as the sedimentary soil, and the particles of this silt soil, they are of medium size and they are not plowable as the sandy soil, but they are much more plowable than the clay soil. The silt soil, it contains large proportion of organic materials, and that's the reason it has got the capacity to supply nutrients in much greater proportion. So the silt soil, it contains organic materials in large proportion, and that's the reason the capacity to supply the nutrients is much greater of the silt soil. Next is the clay soil. Now in the clay soil, the proportion of the small particles, it is maximum. That is, the small particles, they are more, and the particles of the clay soil, they feel smooth to touch. So you have seen when you are making articles or any statues from the clay soil, what do you feel? It is very smooth. So it is smooth to touch and it has got high water holding capacity, right? So the proportion of the small particles, it is maximum in the clay soil, and when you touch it, you feel it very smooth or soft, and that's the reason it has got high water holding capacity. Now let's see about the soil structure. The soil structure, it depends upon the different shapes of the particles present in it. Now this soil, it occurs in the form of columnar, laminar, granular and block shaped structure. So the soil, it is, you can see it in the form of columnar, laminar, granular and block shaped structure, and the soil structure also depends upon the different shapes of the particles present in it. Now you can see here children, here this is your laminar type of the soil and this is your granular type of the soil. Here you can see this is the columnar type of the soil and this is your block shaped structure of the soil. Because it looks like blocks, that's why it is called as block shaped, and the columnar, it is like a column, so it is called as columnar. Let's see about the importance of the soil structure. The fertility of the soil, it depends upon the soil structure. So the advantages of the good soil structure are as follows. Roots, they get sufficient supply of oxygen and water drainage is good. Therefore, the roots of the plants, they grow well. So the whatever fertility of the soil is there, it depends upon the structure of the soil. And for the good soil structure, what are the advantages? That the roots of the plants, they get sufficient supply of oxygen, and what happens? The water drainage is good. That means the water doesn't stay away over there. It flows away, and therefore the roots of the plants, they grow well. So let's recap children what we have learnt in today's session. In today's session children, we saw the first important property of the soil is its color. So the color of the soil, it is because of the several processes. Now the soil, it may be of different colors like your black, red, copper, yellow and grey, and the color of the soil, it is useful for classification too. Then the property of the soil, that is the fertility, then the drainage of the water, the capacity to hold water, all this depends upon the color of the soil. Also the color of the soil, it depends upon the texture as well as the organic ingredients and the chemical ingredients which are present in it. So there are three types of soil, that is the sandy soil, silt soil and the clay soil. Then we saw about the soil structure. The soil structure, in that we saw that the soil, it occurs in the form of columnar, laminar, granular and block shaped structure. Then we saw about the importance of the soil structure, that the fertility of the soil, it depends upon the soil structure, and we also saw the advantages of the good soil structure. So children, in the next session we will continue with the properties of the soil. The link has been given for worksheet. Please solve it time to time. So students, meet you in the next session. Till then, goodbye.